Can you guys see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, now we move to the panel discussion. And yeah, we provide two ways for asking questions. The first is that you can directly use Zoom to put your questions there. And you can also like raise your hand, put the question there, and I will unmute you to let you ask the questions. And also you can like scan this QR code to go to the Slido website and put your question there. And I think Hsieh, you have some question first, right?
Yeah, so I will start with a question for all the speakers. So in this afternoon, we heard about, I think that all the talks are kind of related to some perspectives of potential issues for deep neural networks. For example, we heard about like adversary samples and also like predictions for out of distribution samples and also like some backdoor attacks. So one question is that, do you guys think these kind of issues arise from the that kind of a bias of the training set, or is it kind of the potential problems of current neural network designs? Like if we want to like improve the model's robustness against this variety of this kind of issues, then what could be the most important steps to move on? So who wants to like answer the question first? Maybe Lawrence, you can go first.
Thanks for putting me on the spot. I mean, this is that's a difficult question, right?
Well, if Alex Madry were still here, he would say that it's inherent in the that there are these other aspects of images that are valid features that we as humans don't see, but that our adversaries can manipulate, right? At least that's my interpretation of the bug features not bugs paper. Mm-hmm. Do I have that right?
Yeah, we kind of know a bit about it.
So that seems that it's kind of inherent in working in computer vision. So I think that means we need to find ways of, as Alan Newell was saying this morning, of getting our computer vision systems so that the things they see correspond to the things we see, right? And it's clear we have a long ways to go because there's quite a divergence between what our DNNs are looking at and what we look at. Mm-hmm. But I don't have any particular ideas. Does anyone else on the panel have ideas about how to I don't know, constrain or control? I guess Boqing was talking about changes in the architecture, basically.
Yeah, thank you for. That's indeed a very tough question. But to make the discussion maybe more interesting, I just make a guess. I think, kind of like a bet. I bet that it's not due to the training procedure or training data. It's because of the existing architectures of neural network. So if we see like using Lipschitz continuous network, it's guaranteed that the small input will not be amplified to too big activations and the output. So it's guaranteed, it's certified, robust, but it's not accurate enough. What if we maintain that constraint and using some, instead of manually designed, try to do the search, maybe we could find a better network, which is guaranteed robust, and meanwhile give you high quality prediction results. So that's my take. I think it's because of the neural network architecture right now.
Yeah, so I agree with Boqing. I think we can make a very shallow network, like one layer linear network. Then we can just exactly compute the Lipschitz, but it's probably not powerful enough. So, but I think it's the long tail distribution in the data maybe also plays some role according to your talk, right? Because that may introduce some other problem, I guess. Yeah.
So sorry. Yeah, sorry to cut you. So for me, I have two parts of me. The one part of me is very optimistic. So I think with more people, involved in doing research and kind of rethink about the design objective of neural nets. Right? Instead of pursuing accuracy, we also want some notion of robustness or even ethical constraints embedded in the neural net design. And I think the performance and the certified performance can be improved somehow. But if eventually we want to eliminate, for example, adversarial examples, then basically we are asking us to build a human-like perception system, right? Because all these adversarial examples exist because humans do not agree with machines' decision. In that case, if our final goal is to eliminate adversarial examples, and that basically means to build a human-like or human equivalent perception system, I think there is a very long way to go, and neural nets alone may not be sufficient to achieve that ambitious goal. Hsieh, I think you are saying something, but you are on mute.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. So I unmuted Terry, so I think he has a question. So would you like to ask your question?
Sure. It's a question. Well, first, great talks for everyone. But my question is first towards Tom, and the rest of the panel might chime in. So in doing your analysis, you talked about stationary, but do you need to assume that the distribution of adversarial scores are actually generated from independent observations? Because in lots of the real issues in nature, but also the machine learning adversarial stuff, they're not independent scores. They're actively trying to defeat the system, in which case you lose the independence assumption, which I think also is necessary for your theorems, although I haven't read them in detail enough to be sure. And does the rest of the panel think that that level of independence makes it much harder, or lack of independence makes it harder for us to analyze?
Well, so the stuff that I described requires that the anomaly scores have a well-defined distribution. So yeah, and then we're trying to bound the probability of failing to detect an attack or an anomaly. So, but I think when you're more in the cybersecurity kind of setting, that's not going to work, right? You need to have some sort of more of a minimax robustness constraint instead, right? So I think for open category and out of distribution, it's probably reasonable, but in the adversarial case, now it's an interesting question. If you're looking at some indicators of the distance of, that gives you some indication that the query is adversarial, some measure of adversarialness, then maybe those scores look like they come from a reasonable distribution, and you could look at their CDF. But I don't know. I haven't looked at even what the standard attacks produce. So maybe someone else on the panel might have a sense of that.
I actually have a follow-up question to that, to Thomas, if I may call you that. So it's the score distribution provides somehow a smooth analysis to the adversarial examples. So all the existing work when they try to certify the neural network, they certify the worst case. But if we assume actually a well-defined distribution over the score, maybe we can get a better improved analysis about the robustness to certify that in a smooth way. I wanted to see if you have some comments or some idea to share on that sense.
Well, let's see. If it were a white box attack, then the adversary knows how we're calculating this score too. So then it becomes an issue of how hard is it for them to drive the score down below our threshold tau. And I haven't analyzed that, but yeah, I'm knowing how good the attackers are, they can probably find a way. But it certainly is an interesting question that turns it from a binary question to a continuous one, as you say.
To take the expectation. In expectation, what's gonna happen when there is a white box attack instead of the worst case?
Yeah, and I don't know, but it seems to me that if we want to have a guarantee against an adversary, it has to be more of a minimax guarantee that the best they can do, we can still detect because we have a big enough balls around our images. But the trouble is those balls are not LP norm balls. They've got to be something in the visual space, which takes us back to the first topic. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the discussion. I think we unmute Hsieh Wang. Would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, okay. There are two questions. First question is, I consider, so for the interpretable deep learning technique, we want to know how does deep learning work. Can this technique can help for the defense against the adversary attack? That's my first question. Yeah. And the second question is that we know for the base learning, okay, like the deep ghost processing, it can estimate that, so the uncertainty estimation to give the mean or variance. So can this technique is robust to adversary attack? Okay, this is my two questions. Thanks.
You're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, so I can answer the first question regarding interpretability. So the short answer is no. So at least the current interpretation methods are not robust enough to detect or adversarial example. So people have demonstrated that this interpretability can be under fire. That's literally the title of one paper. And basically they show two types of attack, right? One way is you can manipulate the interpretability maps like a CAM or whatever while keeping the prediction constant. So basically you can add noise such that you can generate whatever interpretation you want. Or you can keep the interpretation map the same, but change the prediction target at your desire. So in either case, these interpretability tools are very fragile. But that being said, our recent ICML's publication actually showed if you use a proper interpretability metric, basically you try to make multiple classes to have the consistent interpretation, then using that as a regulator to train a neural net can actually make the neural network robust, and the robustness is very similar to the performance of adversarial training. So it depends on what notion of interpretability you are using, and you have to use the right interpretability metric to improve robustness. So they are certainly connected, but it's not for free.
Okay, the follow-up question is that, so can we visualize that adversary attack samples to understand how to attack that model?
Yeah, but if the visualization can be fooled or can be deceived, how can you trust that visualization? That's the deeper question. Consider a white box setting where attacker knows you are going to use certain interpretability tool to visualize and to do detection. I can devise an adaptive attack to bypass your detector or your visualization, right?
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
So actually we used to conduct some experiments on MNIST. So basically for larger perturbation, you can actually show there more on the central pixels in the image instead of the boundary pixels. So there's some interpretation of that, but yeah. So but usually for like more complex images like CFAR or ImageNet, it's more like a very small high frequency noise. So it's very hard to really know what it's doing. For MNIST, it's relatively easy. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And for your second question, so I don't. So for Bayesian learning, I think it's some paper, including one of ours, report it can somehow improve the robustness, but I don't know the reason. So one of the reasons may be because you're doing the sampling, so it's actually trying to smooth the landscape of your function. But we don't have any good theoretical reason for that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So thanks for asking and answering these questions. And we have another question here for Lawrence and Boqing. Like both of you guys mentioned, like deep networks are, or like human vision systems are kind of poorly generalized to some like some auto distribution or say long tail images. Like, do you think this, like for our models to overcome these problems, should we consider this from the, like say the architecture design, or say the like Margaret said, like enrich our data sets, or we should consider both to make our network more generalizable? Maybe Lars, you can answer first.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little bit of both, right? Like I think sort of the thing that I've been struggling with a little bit with sort of the adversarial robustness field is that, it's really easy to break our systems, and you really don't need to, compute any gradients or anything like that, right? Like if you sit down for like half an hour and you open, Paint, right? And you can come up with gazillions of ways that will are sort of guaranteed to break our systems. And so to me, sort of the sort of learning settings that we have chosen, right, or like some of the assumptions there, they seem a bit arbitrary from the security point of view, right? Like they may still be interesting from the understanding properties of our model point of view, although I'm not sure whether we made a lot of progress there. But from a security point of view, like I'm not super convinced. Then there's the question of okay, how do you make these systems more robust, right? And I'm a little skeptical that we'll really sort of be able to solve this problem, because I think in order to really solve it, I think, as you alluded to earlier, I mean, you basically need to exactly reproduce the human visual system. And if you don't, then you're always going to be able to find images that are classified differently by the model than they are by human annotators. And so it's a matter of like, well, do you believe that we can pull that off? And I'm a little skeptical, at least in the short term. Making predictions beyond let's say 10 years is always hard, of course. There is a little bit of evidence that sort of data-driven approaches can help, right? So we had a paper in ECCV 2018 where we pre-trained models on 3.5 billion images to predict hashtags for those images, and then we would fine-tune those models on ImageNet. And there was a paper, we released those models, and there was a paper later, I forget who the author was. It was, I think, someone at NYU, but I can look that up later, who basically did analysis on data sets like Thomas's ImageNet C and ImageNet P data sets, as well as adversarial analysis. And their results suggested that sort of inherently these models that were trained on these massive amount of images had more robustness to all kinds of perturbations, right? So there is some evidence that a data-driven approach can help. I don't think it's going to be enough, right? It's like sort of the amount of data that you'd need to scale with, is more than there are images in the world, probably, and so I don't think that's going to be sufficient. So there has to be something on the modeling side as well, but I don't know what it is, right? Like if I knew, I'd be working on that right now, because it'd be the next big idea. I don't know if that answers the question. Maybe Boqing, you can add to this.
Yeah, sure. Also maybe try to make the discussion more interesting. My gut tells me maybe it's not both. It's actually on the model design side. Let me maybe try to explain why I had that feeling. So the data side, people, including Lawrence, your paper, we can try to feed the model not only label data, but also massive amount of unlabeled data. So we can have a better kind of estimation or approximation of the data manifold and the training stage. hoping the model see the manifold, full manifold, it becomes more robust and testing stage. This idea has been there around for a while. People have been using different techniques to better approximate that manifold by adversarial examples, by unlabeled data, by mix up. All the results we have seen so far, I think they can improve the model's robustness, but really it's still far from solved, as you said in the slides. So also recently there is one ICML paper, sorry, forgot the authors as well. They mentioned there is a intrinsic trade-off between robustness and accuracy under certain conditions for neural networks. So it's really hard to achieve both by the existing model architecture design. Therefore, my gut is, I feel actually in order to solve this problem fundamentally, we need a better model design. Maybe not actually a neural network, could be a mixed model, mix of neural networks and some other like the models Cho presented in his slides. Time will tell. Yeah, I don't know, but that's my feeling, and time will tell if I was correct or wrong. Let's see.
Okay, yeah, thanks you guys for answering this question. Hsieh, I think you got another question, right?
Yeah, so Wei Bin Wu, I mute you, so you can ask your question now.
Okay, thank you, Xinyu. I have a question that I want to ask Boqing. So, in your opinion, how is the adversarial robustness related to the problem of domain adaptation? So, in other words, can the task of achieving adversarial robustness be viewed as a problem of domain adaptation? Thank you.
I think the answer is a definite yes. Adversarial training, from my perspective, I think is a domain adaptation problem, because you generate adversarial examples in the training stage. You try to make the model invariant to those examples. So it's basically the same idea as learning domain invariant representations in domain adaptation. So in that sense, it's one connection. Second connection is you can check our 3PR paper this year. First author, actually, Zihang is here. We showed when we train the models, we count two branches bench normalization, one for clean data, the other for for adversarial examples. Actually, we can improve the model accuracy. So also the two branches of bench normalization is also a very typical technique in domain adaptation. So when we train the model, one kind of path of bench normalization, but on the targeted domain, we try to re-estimate that statistics of the estimation. So a very simple technique, very effective. It's almost become a standard trick in all the existing domain adaptation methods. So that's the second connection. The very last connection is regarding, so recently the generative models. So people tried to use the gigantic generative neural networks as image prior to do the regularization or to do the constraints in the downstream tasks. It has been proven effective in domain adaptation. And I see also recently some defense methods, they also use that prior. So they don't retrain the generative model anymore. Instead, they use that as kind of pre-trained, very powerful generative model as image prior to clean the adversarial examples. In that sense, that could be, you can consider that as the third connection. So what other connections there will be, it's really, I'm very hopeful that the community will discover more and more and try to actually improve the robustness and also benefit on the other way around, benefit domain adaptation as well by moving these two fields forward.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
So our next question is about the verification of these models. So in Professor Achori's just talk, he mentioned about the verification of like decision tree models or like some k-nearest neighbors. I'm wondering like for example, suppose we want to scale up these techniques for like more like complex deep neural networks, then what could be the potential directions to go? Like I guess like both all of you guys can discuss about this topic.
Yeah. So so verification for neural network has been there since I think 2018, and there are most of the work try to approximate the nonlinear activation function. So because the main difficult, so if it's linear neural network, then it's just a linear thing. So it's very easy to verify. So the difficulty is the nonlinearity, and most of the work try to approximate its lower bounded and upper bounded the nonlinear activation. So the technique is quite different from what I talk about the nearest neighbor today. But there are some similarity in the sense of the primal dual relationship. So this is actually coming from the neural network verification. So attack and verification can be think of the primal and dual. So attack is trying to find the primal solution. The verification is trying to find the dual solution, which is the lower bound of your minimal perturbation. Yeah, that part is there are some connection. Yeah, but and for more complex thing like if how to combine different structure is probably very hard. Yeah. So one of our goal in the beginning is try to, because there are some paper proposing nearest neighbor classifier can help the robustness of neural network. We try to verify whether we can verify this kind of neural structure, but currently it's not very successful.
Yeah, I want to echo Joe's comments. So basically, this verification method suffer deeply from this curse of dimensionality. So the larger the network, the deeper the network, the looser the bound you will get. But that being said, our recent CVPR paper, we discovered something very interesting, right? So if you look into the attack model, you assume, for example, this rotation or like a brightness or contrast change to cause the semantic changes in the image. It may incur large LP norm perturbation. So it seems at first place it's hard to certify. But if you look closely, these semantic changes are actually governed by a few low dimensional factors like rotation. You just change the degree of the images, so on. So if you try to certify the underlying parameters, and that problem is actually more tractable. Rather than try to certify the changes happen on image space. You try to certify the changes happening on the parameter space that controls the semantic changes. In that case, we found out that this certificate can actually be tight and more scalable to large networks.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your answers.
Yeah, could I ask the panel, the other folks on the panel, what people think about the probabilistic smoothing, which is an alternative for getting guarantees?
Yeah, I think it's also very nice. It's nice in a sense you can take a black box model and then do the smoothing. Yeah. But I think there is so that's good, but there is problem in the sense of you need a lot of inference time. So in the inference time you need to like do maybe 100 times forward propagation.
How much does it damage your classification accuracy?
It's better than other certified training algorithm. Yeah, because it's like you add a random layer in the beginning. So if it's small, then this doesn't hurt too much your accuracy.
Yeah, so there is again a trade-off. If you want to certify more, then that means you need to add a Gaussians with more with larger variance, and larger variance will decrease the accuracy on the clean data. So there's always a trade-off between certification and standard accuracy as well.
Hi, I have a question for Dr. Lawrence van der Maaten. First of all, I think your talk is really brilliant and really shows another perspective about adversarial machine learning. And my question is, because you mentioned like the machine learning systems are actually biased towards different data sets, but on the other hand, the human perception also is kind of biased towards different data sets, like in different countries or regions. So does that mean you think that human perception and machine learning systems are somewhat highly similar in this sense?
I don't know if they're similar. I mean, you know, arguably human systems also have their issues. You know, a lot of which are under discussion in the US these days, I guess. I mean, maybe the difference is that for, you know, computer vision systems, it feels like a much more, you know, easy to solve problem, right? Because you know, at least for sort of things like cultural biases and I mean, those are one example, right? But also, you know, there are biases in sort of what classes do we choose to recognize and which one do we, you know, not choose to recognize, right? Like those kinds of biases seem, you know, easier to resolve than the biases that maybe humans have, right? Because solving some of those would, you know, I guess require, you know, people to travel to every country to, you know, see things for themselves, which may not be quite practical. So I don't know if humans and computer visions are similar in that sense, but I do have a strong sense that at least in computer vision, you know, we should be able to do better with a relatively modest amount of effort compared to the amount of effort that we put into other problems. But I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Thanks, Lawrence. I think that answers my question perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, I think we are running out of time here for the panel discussion. And thanks, Lawrence, Pinyu, Chu, Boqing, and Tom for attending this panel discussion. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the great discussion.
Thanks.
Mhm.